Hello, hello, hello. I want Donald Trump to ban fur sales and leg traps. I want Gavin Newsom to do the same for California. I want Gavin Newsom to sign AB 44 into effect. I wrote a letter to Donald Trump earlier today. I asked him to ban the leg traps. Leg traps are extreme cruelty. That's what the hunters are doing, the particularly the ones that are trapping fur animals wild, like raccoons. They want to live, they want to be happy, they want to be healthy, those raccoons. They want to they have to have their own winter coat, their own fur that they need for the winter. And they trap those, they trap foxes, they trap all kinds of animals with those leg traps. The leg traps, those are kind of like snap vices that snap into the leg, cause tremendous injury. The animal can't get out of this. Sometimes they're trapped in that for days or weeks, suffering, getting infections in the wound, and dying from thirst. And this is unacceptable suffering, and that has to be outlawed. Okay, we have to outlaw this. Every governor nationwide has to outlaw this. And many other things. We have to outlaw gestation crates, where the pig mothers are confined in a very narrow cage, where they can't turn around themselves, where they get sores on the skin, where they suffer in pain, where the discs in the back can even be getting infected or being bunched together and cause unimaginable pain. This is unacceptable. It needs to be banned. Okay, those things need to be banned. The foie gras, the goose liver, they're stuffing geese with food, force feeding them so that their liver gets blown up with fat, causing these animals to suffer horrifically. It needs to be banned. Okay, all of this needs to be banned. All of these horrible things need to be banned. They're putting baby cows into a dark cage all by themselves. They're crying in pain and terror for the mother. No sunlight. They don't get to see any other living being. It is insanity. Okay? That's how they make the veal. It has to be banned. It has to be outlawed. These cruel things have to be outlawed. This is very important that everyone helps, that everyone writes a letter to the legislators. Write a letter to your governors, particularly in these very urgent matters. Very, very urgent. Dog and cat meat trade or consumption needs to be banned in this country in particular. How are the Asian countries gonna ban if we can't even ban this? If they go like, if they look the other way and accept these things, this is unacceptable. It needs to be banned. It needs to be abolished. It needs to be completely outlawed. It should not be accepted at all, dog and cat meat trade. from those Asian markets or Asians or anyone, whatever their excuse may be. They will probably use the excuse, oh, that's our tradition or something. You know, they're cannibals. Oh, in many places at the equator that eat little children, you accept that, you know, just because it's their tradition. They will say too, that's our tradition. We have been practicing this for hundreds of thousands of years. You know, you can't take away our tradition. Now it's cruelty, okay? Whether this is called a tradition or not, it's cruelty, okay? And cruelty should not be tolerated. Whatever these people's excuses are, you know, tradition or religion or whatever, that's not an excuse to be cruel to other living beings. Cruelty needs to be banned in the United States and Canada and in every country. The baby seals, you know, the clubbing of baby seals by those furry, or I don't know how they're called. Horrible. It's absolutely, it's a nightmare, you know. What they're doing, clubbing these baby seals on the ice in Newfoundland. They call it their tradition. You know. They're Christians. This is, I mean, it's unimaginable, you know. It's just unimaginable horror. The mother, you know, they don't have arms and legs. The mother has to be there and see this. See your baby being clubbed to death. The animal rights activists that have been there, they have reported, they have seen the mothers actually cry, scream in agony and cry tears. This is unacceptable, okay? This is unacceptable torture and suffering. It has to be banned. It has to be abolished. Write a letter to your legislators and ask them to stop this. Ask them to ban these cruel things. Or halal and kosher. It's absolutely gruesome. They bleed animals to death. It's unacceptable. They call it religion. It's unacceptable. It's cruel. Cruelty is unacceptable. It needs to be banned. It needs to be outlawed. It needs to be abolished. I want everyone to get involved with this, with animal rights. I want people to get informed. I want you to go on the website of PETA and Sea Shepherd Conservation Society. I want you guys to get informed about these things. They have a whole lot of information in photo and video form for those people that are not as faint-hearted as I am. I can't watch that for very long. I break down in the first few seconds. Look at it. You know, if you don't believe it, they have all of the undercover investigation videos look at it, yeah, inform yourselves, and do something about it. Get into it. It's not about a group or anything. This is not a group thing. You know, every one individual animal rights activist is working completely by herself or himself. So I hear a lot of times, I hear on the internet, people are accusing animal rights activists, that they accuse them to be some kind of group or some kind of movement or whatever. It is not a group and it's not a movement. I wished it was a movement. I wished it would become chic, you know, and fashionable. Maybe in some circles it is. It is becoming that. It's, you know, among the academia, among the ones who are more educated, with more refined education on culture and history and music and fine food and arts and so on. You know. Among those people, you know, that is growing because the reason why it's growing there is because their life is a bit easier, and I hope I get understood with this. They just had much more sensitivity in their lives. So for them, it's not a very far stretch to get from their sensitivity modalities, you know, from their good life and knowledge about the world and cosmopolitanism, to seeing what's going on and having compassion and having that space, you know, in the head for that compassion. You know. Having that space, having that, not being cluttered so much, but having enough space for in the brain for that compassion to be really felt, you know. And while the other people that live in more strained situations, in war zones and so on, they don't have any space in the head. It's not a judgment. They don't have much space in the head to be getting into something like animal rights, because it's much more complex than I can ever explain this in one video, of course, you know. So but I can only say it as good as I can from what I observe. You know, I talk to people from the whole planet, from all the way around the globe. I often talk to people from Africa and Nigeria. What I notice is that the majority of Nigerians are in denial about how dangerous and difficult it is in Nigeria. Just as the Muslims, and you know, the Muslims are in denial about how cruel and inhospitable their religion is. And a lot of people are Muslims in Nigeria. I think that's the dominating religion there. And they all seem to be very much in denial, because it's like they can't see the color red anymore because they're immersed in the color red, red as blood. So they don't even see a blood droplet anymore because they're dunked in blood. That's what it is. So it is very horrible, and I'm not judging from a higher plane. I see this situation, I see how horrible it is, and everyone there is so immersed in this suffering that they think this is part of life. They think this is normal. This is how life is. They go, we kill you, see, this is what we do. That's what some of those tribal people will say to, like what they said to the Vice interviewer. We kill you, see, this is what we do. That's the most normal thing in the world. And they don't have a distance to look at it from a higher perspective. They're so immersed in this suffering, in this lifestyle. They're drilled from little children on to be warriors and going against each other or going against those that are not Muslims. And I mean, it's absolute horror what's happening there. Absolute horror. So I see all of this, I understand where these people are coming from. But if we want to make the world better, it starts with us. It starts here. It starts with those who have that space, that mental, psychological space to do it. And many of them are still like 1%, but let's expand that, Let's make it 2 and 3 and 4 and 5% and up, and let's keep going with this. Let's expand this. Very important is that we always keep in mind that this is not about a movement, this is not about a group, this is not about some kind of ideology. This is about compassion. You do something, you do what you can, you stand up for those who can't speak for themselves, whether they are animals or children or disabled people or anyone who is being battered and oppressed around the world. There are people that torture albatrosses. Those are very, very, very large white birds. And they nail them on the cross like Jesus Christ. What's going on in these people's brains? What kind of monstrosity is going on in those people's brains to do something like this? You have to stand up against that. If you're around those kind of people somewhere down there in South America, towards Argentina, I don't know exactly where that was, or Peru, I think somewhere between Peru and Argentina, at the Pacific. They're doing these kind of atrocities, and if you are seeing any kind of atrocity like this, where they are torturing a bird or a bull or a dog or cat or any animal, you have to stand up against it. You can't be accepting something like this just because they say that's their religion or tradition, or that's what they have done for thousands of years. That's not an excuse. They're torturing their children and teenagers in Africa. There are tribes where they're cutting deep, deep into the skull of the little boys, and they're not even allowed to scream. This is unimaginable torture and suffering. And they do this for some kind of superstitious reasons, because of some kind of fear or some kind of harvest god, or fear that they're, it's all of this, letting these things out on children, these fears. This is, and they call it religion, they call it tradition. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. When you are there in an wherever you are, and you see this kind of atrocity towards animals or children, you have to say something. You have to stand up against it. You have to speak out. You have to talk to them about this. You have to say, this is not acceptable. Okay? It could be dangerous sometimes to say something. But if you don't say something, the torment will continue. You have to say something. You have to stand up against that. You have to say something. Not by going into a civil war or violent opposition. We have to talk to these people with reason. We have to be that what we want to see in the world. We have to speak with kindness and respect towards other people. We have to make them understand it, help them to understand it, not force them. We have to talk to each other about these things. We have to question these things. We have to help other people to question these things. Okay? And then things can move. They can start to move. They can start to dissolve. That the pain and suffering then can finally start to dissolve. And then we can have healing happening in the whole world. I want to see healing happening. Heal the wounds, the psychological wounds of the animals and the humans. That's what I want to see in the world happening. And what I'm aiming at, what I want to see happening as soon as possible is therapy centers that offer therapy for free for everyone in the whole world, where everyone is invited, but where people are not allowed to be violent, neither physically nor verbally nor psychologically. So where people are being basically funneled with a caring framework of compassion, but firmness. You have to have firm funnel walls that funnel the mind, so that don't allow the mind to sway out into bullying someone. So it has to come back to ground zero, to the funnel movement. So we go back into the funnel. I have a specific term for this, the ego dissolution funnel. So where we actually were gently but firmly putting ourselves and other minds into, and helping them, shining the light for them, being the shepherds or the lamp holders, shining the light and guiding them and finally helping them to funnel through that ego dissolution funnel. Get away from the escape routes, come into the funnel, and move straight forward through life. Straight forward, not sideways into bullying or escape routes or drinking or gambling or cutting or drugs. So come into this funnel where this is not accepted, okay? Any of these things, and we're being funneled forward. Okay? And that's how it has to happen. That's how it has to be done. One thing at the time, But we have to move. We have to move forward. We can't be sitting there and allowing the suffering to continue. We can't. We have to move on. We have to move forward. Something has to start to move in the right direction. And it's not being done by someone going on the street and rallying with violence or something. It's not done with that. It's not communication. We have to really communicate with each other. We have to say what we are thinking and feeling. Okay? We need to go into meditation in order to even know what we want, to even feel, to get connected with what we really want. Most people don't even know that. They're not even there yet. And I'm not blaming them because they're immersed in blood, literally in some areas. They're immersed in war. They're immersed in lies and violence in the Western world. So the first step is, sit down in meditation, breathe, allow that one wants to come up. Don't run away with the next uncomfortable thing that comes up. Look at it, listen to it. Sometimes you have to close your eyes in order to see into yourself. But the most important thing is sit somewhere without being distracted by other stimuli from the environment. Go into yourself and find out what you need, what your body needs, what you need, who you are, what your love needs are, what you need to be happy. And it's very tricky for some people when they have, like with me, to use my example, what are my needs? For a long time I didn't really know. What are my needs? I grew up in this world where education and work, but education was valued very highly, which is good, but then the neurotic twist happens, and then they look down on people who are not educated. We children see all of this, that doesn't escape our eyes. We see all of this very, very clearly. They think they don't look down on them, but they do, and I see it. And so, yeah, and then being thin, for women, then they think women need to be thin, and that's noble. That's how I grew up. But I questioned that. I was lucky with that, to question that from very early on. But then I was in some kind of twisted situation, with the conflict towards my mother, who put so much value on being thin and being dressed very unsexually, very unsensually. Was this stigma of, they have this stigma, that social stigma, that someone is if someone gets chubby, then they're being stigmatized, they're being shunned, and this inner fear of getting heavier, and these kind of belief systems that they had. I don't even want to say it. These kind of repetitions, mantras of nonsense. I was lucky enough to question this, really question this all the way through, and I never made that my ideal. So, because I knew that I needed my sensuality. I love my body. I kiss my skin. I respect my body cells. I respect the fat cells that are vital for us. We need to have fat cells. I respect all of my physical needs, all of that. And so I'm straight, so I embrace that, and I want other people that are, and more kids are now coming into the world that are not straight, and society shuns that. In this country they shun that through their idiotic religion, and then these kids are suffering, and they have needs, and they cannot even live out these needs. They have to bury them deep inside, and that's a real horror when I see this. See so many boys out there. Just the other day I saw this young pastor, and it's so obviously crystal clear that he is a homosexual 100%. And these other two guys, 100%, they're 100% gay. And that's good. There's nothing wrong with it. That's wonderful. And yet they suppress it. They want to suppress it. They want to bury it. Because it doesn't fit into their religion. Jeffrey Dahmer, I talked about this in another video before. That was the whole horror of Jeffrey Dahmer's mind. He hated them because he wanted them, and he hated them because he wanted them. Because he blamed them for him wanting them. He couldn't take the blame on himself because he denied his own homosexuality. So, but then he was drawn to the gay bars, and he brought the men home, and then the anger came up against them. How horrific. I mean, not everyone gets into that kind of act out, but it's basically, it's an accumulation. His life that he has lived is an accumulation of that, what I'm talking about. Someone who suppresses his needs. If he had not been drilled with fundamentalist Christianity and the gay hating and all of this, then he would not have hated himself. He would not have hated his lovers in quotation marks. Muslim men that are hating white women, but wanting them because obviously, that's evolution. People want someone that is different to them genetically, but then they hate them because they are not Muslims. And that's another conflict, an internal battle. I want to be, my internal battle is basic. It's quite embarrassing also. And it's always a little bit embarrassing, or quite a bit embarrassing for people. Even embarrassing for themselves, and very painful when you sit in meditation and these kind of conflicts come up and they expose themselves to you, and you get to see all of this without distractions. Like in my case, this studiousness, this academia, the high society, the aristocratic lifestyle, there's a lot of thou shalt nots involved in this. Okay? Christianity in that also does not trail that far behind, because many of them still have that in them dormantly. They just added another thing on top of the other one, never got to resolve the one underneath. So that gets also jumbled up and mixed up then later on. And thou shalt not show cleavage. It's just one of the many things, and I don't even want to say the other things that are so just so adverse that I don't even want to put that into my mouth. So, so many adverse belief systems, as Tony Robbins calls it, impotent beliefs. Like money doesn't grow on trees. This is one of the terrible ones, but not as terrible as the other ones that I don't want to say. So it's not true. It's not true that money doesn't grow on trees. These are all impotent beliefs. The most important thing is in whatever we are doing, whether people are greedy or not, or unempowered, or this or this or that or that. Whatever it is that people have been drilled with, we need to first come back to our senses. We need to go into meditation. We need to understand what our needs are, whatever your needs are. If you have the need like me, you want a rich husband where money grows on trees, and you want a daddy to take care of you. This is very embarrassing for a lot of us to admit, but I see a lot of us that have that. A lot of you girls and women have it. And then they get shamed. They get promptly shamed by others that have it too, but have buried it. Don't allow it. They're the worst judges on that. But we, like most of us, have it. We want to be taken care of. Sugar daddy, older man taking care of us. We want to feel safe and protected. We want this rich man that has a multitude of security systems built around us. So that is what we want, And if I tell that my mother, who has it too but doesn't allow it, she will judge me for that. Oh, that's really bad. I don't want to hear that. Rich man, I don't want to hear that. To her, that's like low class to say something like this. It's this, it's always this low class stigma attached to all of this. That's how I grew up. That's low class? No, that's low class. No, that's low class. No, you can't do this. That's low class. No, it's like, my brain is buzzing, And so I can't be worried about this, whether someone thinks this is low class, that I'm wearing a pink t-shirt or have a pink putty in my hair. Then I will go into reverse. I will put all pink stuff on it. Particularly the society that I come from, where probably the color pink is the least accepted. It's true. Dark blue. Thou shalt only wear dark blue. like we're going to a funeral. I love dark blue, don't get me wrong. Yeah. It's one of my most favorite colors. I really love it. It's very, very soothing and wonderful. But they have this specific idea about this, you know, dark blue and burgundy. It's like you have to wear dark blue and burgundy. You have to be a scholar and you have to be informed about architecture, history, and all of that. Yeah, I love all of this. All great. It's one all good. The problem comes in when it becomes a categorical imperative. You know, when it becomes stigmatized judgment, and when it becomes forceful, where there's shame involved and all of that. No, then a lot of people will go into reverse and they will walk away from this. I know a woman, she grew up in Russia, half Chinese, half Russian woman in LA. I met her. And she hated classical music. And then she told me why. Because it was drilled into her. Like, we only listen to classical music. And then for the child, it becomes a confinement. And then they want to get out of that. They want nothing to do with that world anymore. It can even drive people like her into societies that are very unbeneficial just because she wants to get away from that other society. So I hope she did not drive herself into an adverse society. But, you know, it's all of this force, you know, it's all of this violent communication with children and groups and friendship circles and so on. This shaming and the bullying and making fun of others and the segregation. All of this is so completely wrong. That goes against our biology, psychology, metaphysics, energy. So we're energetic, metaphysical beings, all of us. We're energy bundles, okay? We're sensitive and we can't be forced and drilled and hammered into certain cultures that are often forceful and adverse. And some of them are violent and extremely painful, and people think that's what they need to adhere to just because that's how they grew up. You know, we have to come back to ground zero within ourselves. We have to go into meditation and we need to breathe. Everyone has to do it. It doesn't matter where you're from and what your culture is. Okay, this is a technique from Gautama Buddha. That was before they made a religion out of it. Gautama Buddha is a philosopher. He didn't want a religion to be made out of it. Okay, that was he was very clear about this also, very clear. But the human ape makes a religion out of it because the human ape doesn't understand these things very well. So he immediately makes a religion out of it. And where there's religion, there's hierarchy, yeah, there's ego attachment, identification, and then the list goes on. This is, you know, dwindling of neurotic consequences and interactions that are unbeneficial and even destructive. So we have to come back to this ground zero where every single person has to do it so we can actually see You see what's happening. You see there's an animal suffering. You see there's a child suffering. You see it. Okay. When you really see it, you feel compassion. You're woken up to this situation. You see it. An Asian man who has blow-torched puppy dogs. I've seen the video. It's so unimaginably horrific what's happening out there in Taiwan and Vietnam. The suffering is so unimaginable. It's you can't explain it in words. It's so horrific. A man like this needs to immediately stop what he's doing. Immediately. Stop, sit down. Sit down in meditation. Whatever your belief system is. They're probably so-called Buddhists that haven't understood a thing, not a thing of what Gautama Buddha was trying to say. Gautama Buddha said we need to end suffering. Okay. And what do people do? They speed it up. Sit down. Okay, don't look at the Dalai Lama. He's not your role model. Okay, he hasn't understood anything either. He just happens to be living in a more plush and aristocratic way. But he hasn't understood anything either. I read his books. I know he hasn't understood it. It's all sad. But let's take that guy that has murdered dogs in the dog meat and cat meat industry. Let's take him. Sit down. Sit down and stop what you're doing right now. And don't continue. And go into meditation. Go into meditation every single day. And then look at the puppy. Look at that living being, that complex, sentient, crying, helpless, needing love. Look at that living being. That living being, that is you. Nothing separates us, okay? We are them and they are us, okay? The same sentience, the same needs. That's the same children, the same innocence, the same need for mama. Puppies, they only know to surrender. That's all they know. And then these people blowtorch them. And they surrender, these puppies, no matter what's going on. It's unbearable. It's unbearable. It's unbearable for me. Look at the puppy. Look at that living being. Look at the deer baby. Look at the raccoon. Look at the fox. Look at the horses, the cows, the pigs. Look at every single individual. Look at these innocent beings. Look at the individuals. Look at that individual living being, that sentient being. When you come out of meditation, you can see him or her for who they are. Living, innocent, living being, complex, sentient beings that want to live and be happy and eat and be loved and protected. So when you go into meditation, you can see them. Don't be afraid of the childhood pain coming up. It just wants to talk to us and communicate. And then become aware. This is what happened to me in the past. It's very sad and unfortunate. But it's no longer something I need to run away from, you know. I can put it into my book library. It's not going to bother me anymore. I just need to become aware about it. This is what happened. Let the tears flow. Integrate it into the shelf. And then see the other living beings. See their needs. And then you are ready. You are ready to stop your professions that are cruel. And you are ready to protect all innocent living beings from other people. You guys take care.